Alright. Trix seems to think that it's just a matter of infinite debate and two sides of a coin. This whole issue, and what I said, is clearly not the case, and that is that material reality is not well represented as consisting of things with inherent qualities. There's a huge history to this. I didn't make this up. It's the idea that material reality is objective reality. There are objects, things in themselves, that have identity, real identity, and qualities, characteristic of those things inhere in them. And you can categorize them. You can put red jelly beans in the objective classification of red things because they're red. They have redness in them. It's not a matter of opinion, Trick, because we can establish which is more fundamental, which matches reality, and other important facets that inform this question of are there really things in themselves with qualities or not. So it's simple. Just tell me something and define it in terms of its inherent qualities. And you know what I'll do? I will show how those qualities are like red, that it's not built into the object, but it's a reflective property, and there has to be light, and it's relative to light, and it's relative to the way our color vision works, and so on and so forth. And Gary notices that I do these. He says, you broke that thing with language because you just added qualifications, and that's the point. You can always add qualifications. That's a part of both skepticism and relativism both. Relativism means it's relative to infinite things, infinite qualifications. The qualifications define, what you're considering something relative to. You can that's right. We all realize you can nitpick and infinitely qualify anything, any point, any concept, anything. And people are like, but don't do that. Don't spend all your time doing that. I don't spend all my time doing that. It's just, okay, look, we can do that. That gives us an infinite engine to run through some thought experiments from time to time. Like, we know that we can pick things apart into bundles of super complex relationships, and that the triangulation of all these relationships together does give it some sort of consistency that we can model as a thing. We do that on a computer, for example. It's very useful. But we also know that really it breaks down to these series of relationships. There's a counterintuitive sort of, but what is related if not things? And that's why I pointed out, people want to get all technical and just to use it, when I think technically I'm confused, therefore it's confusing. No. The bottom level, if you really want to know how can it break down into relationships, is because at the bottom level, all these particles are just disturbances in fields. That's a self-relationship of the field with itself over time, not self instantaneously, which you can't have that kind of relationship with yourself. But you can have different configurations over time and a relationship with yourself over time through that. And that's what it seems like fundamental particles are. And then everything else is built up from that. That's what it seems like to me. But it's also besides the case because we're cognitive creatures and everything's automatically relative to our senses and our body, which is our way of behaving with the things we sense and interacting with them. It's all going to be relative to that. It's easy. It's trivial. You want to say this is a matter of dispute. No, it's a matter of dispute, just like believing in Christ, was taken for granted, and then tolerant Christians might go, well, we can each believe our own thing. Yeah, right. Okay. But that doesn't mean it's actually equally supported by equal evidence and people actually look into facts. So come on, give me a definition of something, in its own inherent nature. Now, a philosophically educated person would run to mathematics, but we're talking about reality first of all. Second of all, You're just going to force me to pull out my Where Mathematics Comes From, my copy of Where Mathematics Comes From. These things are all relative to metaphors of the human body, just like the container concept. And I don't know if I made this clear, but anybody that watched my description of Russell's paradox, what happened is we found out mathematics was just an abstraction of a container metaphor. But they didn't think of it as a container anymore, so to them it was fine for a container to contain itself, right? A set can contain itself. All the things that are not France contains itself because it's something that's not France. But if we were more strict on realizing it was a container, well, containers can't contain themselves. But that's a physical limitation. That's exactly the limitation that the mathematical and Platonic logicians go for. These chances to ignore reality. You don't need to have a body. You don't need to assume there's a physical reality in order to do your logic. It's all pure logic. That's what I'm against. You do need your body. You do need physics. You need all of these supporting things. You know, like I talked about in the last video, you know, people have an idea of a pencil in the void. Everything else and nothing else exists. You know, people tell you they can imagine that. It's like, they're seeing a pencil, which means there's light and a light source, and they haven't really created a void. They have actually a whole universe which they put a mask over so they don't see anything but the pencil, and they're going, it's a pencil in a void. No, it's still only a pencil because of all the relationships to the things behind the curtain, you know, that you didn't really get rid of. Anyway, just come up with something if you think it's a matter of debate. There are no things actually definable in terms of inherent qualities. End of story. It's been proven. You could catch up. I don't care that people still believe in some dogmatic view of logic and they think that's fine because it's not called a god, and so they're allowed to just, hey, the facts are there. It is debatable. Okay, so if you don't want to have the conversation, I'm not agreeing to disagree on this one. You're factually mistaken.